Good morning and welcome to Gospel Bytes, where we take a bite at the Gospel for the day. Today is Saturday, July 8th. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Glory to you, O Lord. The disciples of John the Baptist came to Jesus, saying, "Why do we and the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?" And Jesus said to them, "The wedding guest cannot mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them, can they? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast. No one sews a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old cloak, for the patch pulls away from the cloak, and a worse tear is made. Neither is new wine put into old wineskins, otherwise the skins burst, and the wine is spilled, and the skin are destroyed. But new wine is put into fresh wineskins, and so both are preserved." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise you, Lord Jesus Christ. All right, so John the Baptist's disciples were asking, is fasting really still relevant today? A lot of Christians, even Catholics, have abandoned this tradition of fasting, or it's Jesus even said at one time when he cured a demoniac that there are some demons which can only be cast out with much prayer and fasting. So it wasn't that Jesus was against fasting. Jesus was saying that you have to understand tradition in order to fulfill it properly. Otherwise, you're just blindly doing things. It's a lot of people hate the word tradition, but Jesus is not against it. What he's talking about is that now that you are filled with the Spirit, now that you know Jesus, you have to see rituals and traditions in a different light. You cannot continue practicing it in a superstitious manner. It's like people go to Mass. One time I talked to a lady from Latin America, and she said, "Well, everyone went to Mass where I come from. Not that we believed, but it was just a culture. When you receive Jesus, things has to change. You cannot just do things out of obligation, and you have Jesus in your heart. No, when you have Jesus in your heart, things is going to change. That you're going to come not because it's the status quo, not because it's just a cultural thing, but because you love Jesus. So this is what he speaks about: old wines into new wineskins. You have to have a new outlook of life. Just recently we had a mass wedding where we had 9 couples who got married, and these were people who were civilly married but not sacramentally married. But in many places, some people say, "Yeah, we were living together outside of marriage, and then when we got married, we broke apart." No, it's because they never changed their thinking of marriage. When people think of marriage now, they think of it as a piece of paper, a contract, something to please grandmother, and nothing more. It's just something of a culture. So when they entered sacramental marriage with these things in mind, thinking of it as a mere paper they sign and a contract, no different from buying a house, then if Jesus is going to come into their marriage, then it's not going to work, because their idea, their thinking, their belief in that never changed. So it's going to burst. Let's say one partner, one of the couple, one spouse is growing in faith and the other one isn't, and yet they say, "That's why we got into this marriage thing." But the mentality hasn't changed, so they clash, and eventually they break apart. So once you decide to put Jesus in your heart, in your life, he's going to set order in your life. And if you're not a person who is fond of order, If you like this order, you haven't changed that, you're not going to give up your vices, you're not going to change your ways, then it's going to burst. The relationship with God is not going to work. You cannot say, I love God, but I love my habits, my old habits, my vices even more. No? So Jesus is saying, you know, the purpose of tradition is to get closer to God. Not just to fulfill a status quo, not just to feel good that we're doing something that is obligatory, but to get closer to God. And if that's not bringing us closer to God, then you have to rethink. Maybe you don't understand why we do that anyway. Why we do what we do. It's it's the same thing with any tradition, whether it's religious or not. Why do we eat together? No, why do we kiss before we leave? Why do you kiss your spouse, your children before you leave? And as they grow older, they forget this because they think, oh yeah, it serves no purpose anyway. So you forget what's the purpose of kissing. Maybe that's just a cultural thing, a traditional thing. So you start to drift apart because you never understood that it was supposed to bring you closer together. So what Jesus is saying is, now that you have Jesus in your hearts, now then things have to change. You have to um, look at faith differently, spirituality in a different manner. You have to put Christ there. It's not just you fulfilling a tradition. I'm Father Jerry Sembrano for another edition of Gospel Bites. God bless you. We'll see you soon. Let's get ready for Mass.